Hello and welcome to this week's very special episode of the Entrepreneur Interview Series presented by the Undergraduate Entrepreneurship Association at Carnegie Mellon University. Today, I am pleased to be joined digitally by a very accomplished and successful alumnus of CMU. My guest today was named on the prestigious Forbes 30 Under 30 list for his work on a regenerative braking device, but more importantly, he is creating revolutionary new industrial products, which will allow the trucking industry to shift towards sustainability. He is the founder and CEO of Hyliion, founder of HeadSmart Labs, and founder of Promos on Campus. Hyliion is a firm producing modular hybrid systems that require no additional infrastructure, pay for themselves over time, and help the trucking industry mitigate its production of 5% of all greenhouse gas emissions globally. My guest today also has a bachelor's degree and master's degree in mechanical engineering from CMU. Again, it is my pleasure to introduce the CEO and founder of Hyliion, Mr. Thomas Healy. It's a pleasure to speak to you today.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. It's fun to get an opportunity to come back to my alma mater and chat a little bit about what the last 5 years has brought since I left CMU. So looking forward again to share more.
Absolutely. Let's get straight into that. Can you just talk a little about the overall mission of Hyliion and what you're working on there?
Yeah, absolutely. So Hyliion is bringing electrified powertrain technology to the commercial vehicle space. And so, as everyone kind of knows, right now we're in this amazing opportunity area where electrified powertrain and electrified vehicles are coming to market. Over the last 5 to 10 years, we've seen a huge influx of this in the passenger car space. Probably the best known one is the Tesla, the Model S, the Model 3, right? And we're at a unique point today where that same trend and evolution is starting to take place in the commercial vehicle space. So the large semi trucks that you see going down the highways. And so what Hyliion's doing is we're bringing that electrified technology to that market, to the commercial vehicle market, and really focusing on delivering solutions that work well for the trucking space. And we can dive into more about how the product actually works, but the general gist is bringing electrified solutions to save money and to reduce emissions.
Awesome. And to provide some context, what do you see as being the meaning of the entire sustainable transport industry, and really why this is so crucial to humanity at this point in time?
Yeah, so the transportation sector, I think is the number one producer of emissions globally, right? And so, if you can come in and have an impact on that, that's kind of the biggest opportunity to really reduce global GHG emissions. And from our standpoint, trucking's a amazing opportunity to tackle because when you think about all the stuff that's in the room you're sitting in today, right? Like at some point in its life, every single product has pretty much hit a truck and has been driven around on a tractor trailer, gets to a store, and then you go purchase it, right? And so from our standpoint, if we can come in and reduce the GHG levels of trucking, that's going to open up just a huge opportunity for reducing global CO2 emissions, NOx emissions, and just making an overall a cleaner planet, which it's self-explanatory the benefits that can come from that.
You're taking a far different approach than the somewhat more notable Nikola and Tesla type competitors that you're working with. You're working on this modular system for the powertrain. Can you talk about the decision to do that and the great benefits that can have?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you hit the nail on the head. The other two prominent companies in this space are Nikola and Tesla. So all three of us are bringing electric solutions to the market, but we're doing it in a different way, right? So at the end of the day, all three vehicles are electric vehicles, but the difference is where does that electricity come from that actually charges the batteries on the truck? So for Tesla, they're using the grid, right? They're gonna you drive all day, then you plug it in at night, and you charge the batteries back up. For Nikola, they're actually using hydrogen. Then that hydrogen is being converted into electricity through a fuel cell locally on the vehicle. With our approach, what we're actually doing is we're taking natural gas as your fuel source, and specifically renewable natural gas, burning that through a generator and using that to produce electricity and charge the batteries up as you're going. So, kind of going back to that philosophy of all three of us are bringing electrified solutions to market. It's just each of us is using a different fuel source in order to charge the batteries. Now, we believe that natural gas and renewable natural gas is the right way to go for cost and emissions levels, as well as the infrastructure that's already set up out there. But the other point that you touched on, which is another kind of big differentiator for Hyliion, is that Nikola and Tesla are trying to develop the entire vehicle from the ground up, right? So not only are they reinventing the powertrain, but they're also building the truck, the cab, the axles, the chassis of the vehicle, right? I mean, they're trying to do the whole entire vehicle. Versus Hyliion's approach is much more similar to like how Cummins is approaching the market, where we're focused on the powertrain, and then we're working with the existing truck OEMs like the Peterbilts and the Navistars and Freightliners of the world to actually put our technology in their vehicles and deliver that to fleets. And so from our standpoint, it offers just us to stay focused really on the electrified products and not have to worry about designing and developing the entire vehicle, which offers just a faster path to market, because the trucks that we're using are already out on the road today. They're already developed, they're built. The OEMs have built a fantastic product. The area for evolution right now is really in the powertrain.
You also mentioned that choice to go with renewable natural gas. Now, with that choice, you're actually able to turn pre-existing Class 8 freight trucks into net carbon negative trucks that are literally reducing the amount of carbon in the atmosphere. How are you able to achieve that?
Yeah, so renewable natural gas is it's a fascinating fuel because, as you mentioned, it has a net carbon negative emissions profile, which actually means that it's a below zero emission score. So if you're a company like you've got manufacturing operations as well as logistics operations. Well, if you use our trucks with renewable natural gas, the negative emissions profile from your trucks can actually offset the emissions of your warehouse and manufacturing so that you can become a zero emission company. But the way that we're able to do it is renewable natural gas is really a process of capturing methane coming off of landfills and dairy farms, and then taking that and pumping it into the natural gas pipelines and using that as a fuel in the vehicle, as opposed to just letting it gas off into the atmosphere. And when you look at the emissions that would have come from just having that fuel gas off, those are significantly worse for the environment than the emissions that come out of the actual tailpipe of the vehicle. And so from that standpoint, that's what drives that net carbon negative profile, because using RNG, renewable natural gas, as a fuel in our vehicle is actually cleaner for the environment than not driving your truck at all.
We see all the time, we see like big companies like Amazon and Apple and other huge companies like Microsoft comes to mind that are making these huge promises about being carbon neutral or like net carbon negative by certain dates in time. Are you going to play a big part in all of those big companies' promises to do those things?
That's a big part of this goal, right? And that's one of the unique things of our solution is, if you compare it to the Nikola and Tesla approaches, those guys can get you down to zero emissions if they use purely wind and solar to produce the electricity for Tesla's case. But with our solution, for a fleet or for an organization, that negative profile can offset other parts of the emissions profile of the company, which we do strongly believe will be a large contributor to getting them to a net zero emissions profile for an entire organization. And that's one of the things that we found when we're actually engaging with fleets and companies and talking with them about the benefits of our product, is they realize that getting to net zero emissions is an ambitious goal. But if you can achieve a negative profile with trucks, you just got so much closer to achieving your goal than you were before.
And whenever you imagine the future of sustainable transport, do you imagine a future with just renewable natural gas that you're trying to create? Or are you trying to create a diverse profile of possible fueling mechanisms for sustainable vehicles?
Yeah, so in terms of like our vehicle and using renewable natural gas, so renewable natural gas from like a fuel standpoint is the same as just natural gas. The difference is where did the actual fuel come from, right? So from that standpoint, the vehicle that we're developing can run on natural gas that came from fracking, or it can run on renewable natural gas. Now, the companies that we're working with have a strong focus on the RNG side because it offers that negative profile. But to what you were mentioning in terms of the roadmap here and other renewable sources, we actually have in our roadmap and development a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle as well. This was really driven off of customer demand. Some of the fleets that we've worked with came to us and they said, they've set a corporate mandate that they want to move to hydrogen. And even though, the cost can be lower and the emissions can be better with renewable natural gas, they still have a kind of internal mandate and initiative to go to hydrogen. And so we're actually able to take our powertrain technology, and as opposed to using a natural gas generator to produce that electricity, we can use a hydrogen fuel cell as well. And in our public filing, you may have noted that we mentioned Hyliion as well as Symbio, who are some of the leading producers of fuel cell and hydrogen storage tanks, and so working with them on a collaboration so that we can leverage their technology on the fuel cell side in our powertrain, in our hypertruck powertrain. And so that kind of gets us to a point where, as we look at the roadmap of trucking here and what the future has to bring, we kind of stay generator and fuel agnostic. So, if hydrogen stations become abundant and the availability of hydrogen is there and costs come down, well, then fleets could utilize our powertrain with hydrogen as a fuel source. We just see it as today, and for a long time to come, renewable natural gas is the fuel that makes the most sense to use to charge those batteries.
Nice. That's pretty cool. And you mentioned your public filing as well. Can you talk a little about whether or not your public filing was based on huge stock successes of other electric vehicle companies? And also, what's it like for you to watch your own stock price for a company you founded?
So I have to be a little careful with this one just because we're in a SEC review period right now. We've just recently filed the proxy. And so I can't talk too much about the things that you mentioned, but what I can say is, from Hyliion's end, for anyone that's not aware of the transaction, we're doing a SPAC transaction with Tortoise Acquisition Corp. So Tortoise Acquisition Corp is already trading on the New York Stock Exchange under the ticker SHLL. And we've recently announced a merger with Tortoise, and we'll be using that to ultimately take Hyliion public. And our target is that by the end of Q3, we'll have this process fully done. We'll be through the proxy review period here, and then Hyliion will be the publicly traded company. So that's kind of the path we're on now. The kind of details, the background of the transaction, where there's both a SPAC aspect of kind of funds that are coming in from that, as well as a PIPE process. So once again, kind of all publicly announced things. The Tortoise Acquisition Corp had approximately $235 million in trust under the holdings company there, and then we actually went out and raised a PIPE process along with this transaction, where we're bringing in an additional $325 million through that PIPE. And so it's going to be those two those two assets of funds there that will come together. And when this transaction actually closes, there's a whole bunch of things around redemptions and ability for SPAC investors to have what's called a redemption period, and ability to decide whether or not they want to make their investment. But that's all kind of getting into the weeds. But ultimately, it'll be those funds that will allow us to continue to grow the company moving forward here.
Cool. And let's go back in time a little bit. Can you talk about how your journey led you from being a mechanical engineer and a motorsports racer into founding and leading Hyliion?
Yeah, so I had a blast at Carnegie Mellon. It was a huge part of kind of my life thus far, right? And started undergrad, I guess it was in 2010, and did a undergrad in mechanical engineering, did a double bachelor's degree with engineering and public policy as well, and a minor in business. And while I was at CMU in undergrad, I'd started a couple other companies. You mentioned before, Promos on Campus, as well as HeadSmart Labs. And CMU is a fantastic place for really just exploring new ideas, and the classmates that you have, or the people that I got the opportunity to surround myself with with at Carnegie Mellon. It's a fascinating and awesome group of people, right? I mean, it's extremely motivated group. people have huge ideas, and really the goal is trying to figure out how you can go achieve those. And so I kind of got the taste of doing a couple of startups in undergrad. I absolutely loved it, and then I stayed on for a master's program in engineering, and while I was in that program was kind of the opportunity to start Hyliion came up, and the way it all kind of came to fruition was it was really just an idea, and then we applied to the Rice Business Plan competition, and we ended up getting accepted. And so we were the representing company for Carnegie Mellon down at the Rice Business Plan pitch competition. And that was really what started it all. We went there, we had a ton of success. We were able to raise some funds through that competition, and then it all just snowballed from there. We did the DOE Clean Tech Prize. We went to Mass Challenge and pitched the idea, and it kept on growing from there. But I think at Carnegie Mellon, it's the environment you have there where it's there's kind of no boundaries, right? It's just like, hey, if you've got an idea, go run with it. Don't let things become hurdles that prevent you from going and doing it. And I think that's one of the great things that the CMU atmosphere and culture have been able to create is, go out on the limb and see what you can go accomplish. And, you have a safety net, right? Nobody's going to let you fail, right? I mean, in terms of if the idea you're running down doesn't work, well, that's fine. You're still in college, you're still going and getting your degree, right? But take that opportunity and go try things, go, see what you can accomplish, right? Go try a startup, go, run down the path of exploring a new idea you have and see what comes of it. It all happens kind of one step at a time. From my standpoint, it was like a vision of, we could go do this. We could go transform the trucking industry. But, it all starts with just taking the little steps and, sharing your ideas with others, getting people excited about it, getting their feedback about how you need to morph that idea to really make it work for the industry you're going after. And there's obviously a lot of talented people at CMU that know how to do a startup and what you should do, what you shouldn't do, and so I guess my advice to anyone that is at CMU and listening to this is go try things, right, and leverage the amazing network you have around you to see what you can go accomplish.
Yeah, I like to think that over time in your life, it becomes more financially dangerous to start a startup, or, not that it's ever like a dangerous or bad idea, but that if you're in college, you will never in your life have more support and resources than you do at that point, and you will never have, more financial ability to go and pursue these wild ideas that you think of.
I fully agree with that, right? Once you graduate and you've got a full-time job working for a larger company, then you're going to have to make the decision of, well, am I going to go pursue a startup and leave that secure job? Or, when you're at college, it's, hey, I can still keep going and getting my degree, but I can do this in parallel and on the side. And as you said, leverage that network that's already built in place at CMU.
Speaking of wild new plans, can you talk about the potentially revolutionary nature of this hypertruck electric range extender you're creating?
Yeah, so the hypertruck product is the latest product that we've announced and unveiled, and so it's really the one that we were talking about earlier, the full electric powertrain that gets recharged off of natural gas or renewable natural gas, and so that's now a full powertrain product for the trucking industry. We've already started shipping a hybrid electric system, which is really a bolt-on to the existing truck. That can save you some in fuel, but the hypertruck is really reinventing the entire powertrain of the vehicle. And I know I mentioned this before, but it really goes back to three things that are benefits of it. One is it's reducing the cost, so it offers the lowest total cost of ownership of any other solutions that are out there. It has the lowest and only net negative emissions profile. And since we're using natural gas as our fuel source, we're able to leverage the already built out and existing infrastructure of refueling stations for natural gas. So in the US alone, there's around 700 stations already built out, both up in the Northeast, down here in Texas, out on the West Coast. I mean, it's really across the country. And the benefit for us is that as a company, we don't have to go out and build out infrastructure in order to deploy our vehicles, right? We can leverage the existing infrastructure that's already out there and let the fleets we're working with experience the benefits of the product, which is a huge win, right? That's one of the big questions with full electric plug-in off the grid as well as hydrogen vehicles is, where is that fuel going to come from and how much is it going to cost to build out that infrastructure?
So obviously, there's a very unfortunate global event that is occurring currently, but on the back burner, daily global CO2 emissions are projected to have been reduced by 17% during this time. So I want to know how you think this will affect the public interest in sustainable transport in the near future.
So it's the first time I've actually heard the actual number of 17%, but it's fascinating because what we have heard from some of the companies we work with is they've been able to experience the emissions reductions in cities over the last few months, right? And I think it's made people realize just how much of an impact emissions has on both, the public health and safety, as well as just, you look out a window and, are you able to see for miles and miles, or is there smog, is there pollution, right? And before, when, we were kind of just in this routine of every day the emissions levels weren't changing much, right? So, you're kind of used to it. Well, now through this COVID period, I think cities have really seen a drastic change in emissions levels, and the actual impact has been noticed, right? And so I think that's really kind of opened people's eyes to, emissions and global warming and GHG levels are a true thing, and we need to address it, right? And we're seeing from California, they've recently come out and announced some new policies or proposed policies around electric vehicles. Those are some of the things. It's all going to drive us towards ultimately reducing emissions, having a cleaner planet, and hopefully we can sustain these lower emissions levels in the years to come here.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank you very much for explaining your new revolutionary technologies to anyone who would be interested.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have a nice day.
You too. Bye.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Entrepreneur Interview Series presented by the Undergraduate Entrepreneurship Association at Carnegie Mellon University. That was Mr. Thomas Healy, CEO and founder of Hyliion. You can find out more about Hyliion by visiting hyliion.com. That's HYLIION.com. And for the entire CMU UEA, I am Nick Spolowski, wishing you good luck on all your future ventures. Thank you.